My fiancé demanded a prenup, saying he wouldn't gamble his future on me. He didn't know I was already a millionaire. That night, over handmade pasta and candlelight, he casually sealed his own fate, believing he was protecting himself from me. He had no idea he was sitting across from a woman who had silently built an empire, and that his arrogance was about to cost him everything. My name is Abigail Hayes. I'm 32 years old, and Denver, Colorado is where I've carefully crafted a life designed to be invisible. For 3 years, I've been the mid-level tech consultant driving a dented 10-year-old Honda, living in a modest apartment and always ordering the least expensive wine. I wanted to be underestimated. It was my shield, my privacy, and frankly, my superpower. Grant had known this version of me, the one who was easy to understand, easy to categorize. He saw himself as the ambitious one, the provider, the person with more to lose. He never pushed for specifics, never wondered why I never seemed impressed by flash or luxury. He just placed me neatly into the story that made him feel important, and I let him. We were at Marcilo's, our usual corner table near the window. City lights blurred outside. Candlelight flickered between us. A server had just refilled the bread. Should have been romantic, but when Grant spoke, the air around us turned to ice. I need to protect what I've built, he said, folding his hands, his voice smooth and calm. I won't risk my future on anyone, even someone I love. I set my wine glass down a little too carefully. A prenup, he nodded, relief washing over his face that I'd said the word for him. Yes, just something smart, clean, responsible. Then I smiled, a genuine, quiet smile that he completely misinterpreted. Okay, I said, the tension drained from his shoulders. He even laughed a little, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Abigail, thank you. You have no idea how much I appreciate that. Most people turn this into a whole thing. Protecting what you built makes sense, I replied, and it did. What fascinated me was that he spoke as though he were the only one in the marriage entering with anything worth protecting. But that was just the beginning of his colossal misunderstanding. I thought that was the worst part, that a man I loved could dismiss my worth so casually. I was wrong. What he didn't know was that 6 years earlier I'd built a cloud-based inventory platform from a spare bedroom. I licensed it quietly, globally, until the royalties became a river. That river bought my first duplex, then another property, then another, until monthly deposits were so routine I barely noticed them. Consulting was merely the outer shell of a life deliberately kept simple, a fortress of anonymity I'd constructed for a very personal reason. When I was 14, I watched my parents turn bank statements into battle maps. Money became a weapon, shared accounts, proof of injury. I swore that if success ever found me, I would never let it arrive in a room before I did. I wouldn't be a target, I wouldn't be seen as an ATM, and I certainly wouldn't be underestimated. So when Grant squeezed my hand and said, "This is exactly why I know you're the right person," something inside me went very still. Not dramatic, not loud, just a quiet settling. A decision had been made. When does your lawyer want to move on it? I asked, keeping my voice even. He's already drafting the paperwork, Grant said. We can review it next week. It should all be very straightforward. Already drafting. This hadn't begun tonight. Tonight was only the presentation. This was a premeditated dismissal of my value. What they did next changed everything. That sounds fine, I said. I'll have my attorney review it too. His fork paused in midair. He looked up, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. You have an attorney for work, I said lightly. That part at least was true. Eleanor Houghton was my attorney for everything. When I left the restaurant, the rain had deepened from mist to a steady silver wash. Grant kissed my cheek, promised to call in the morning, and disappeared into the glowing taillights of his Audi. I sat in my Honda, the windshield ticking under the rain, and called Eleanor. She answered on the second ring as if she'd been waiting. Tell me he finally did it, she said, her voice dry. He did. And you agreed, I presume, with that sweet, unsuspecting smile you perfected years ago. Of course, I said. Now it's time to show him what straightforward really means. This wasn't just about a prenup anymore. It was about principle, it was about respect, and he had just lost both. I thought Grant's demand was a personal insult, but it turned out to be just the first domino in a chain reaction of betrayals. Next week, Grant's lawyer, a slick-haired man named Mr. Peterson, sent over their draft. It was exactly what I expected, a generic document clearly designed for someone with minimal assets. It was a template that screamed, "We don't think she has anything." It proposed that I waive any claim to his business equity, future earnings, and his substantial investment portfolio. It painted me as the dependent party, the one who needed to be protected from himself. Grant was positively beaming when he forwarded the email. "See, told you it would be simple. Just need your signature and we're all set." I felt a coldness spread through me. Simple for him, perhaps. But simplicity was a luxury I hadn't afforded myself in years. This wasn't just about his money. This was about him erasing my existence, my achievements, my entire silent world. That's when I realized something was very wrong with his perception of me, and it went far deeper than I thought. "Eleanor," I called, "I want his prenup to look like a children's drawing next to ours." Eleanor, a woman who had once navigated a hostile takeover of a multi-billion-dollar corporation with the calm of a seasoned chess player, chuckled. "My favorite kind of project, Abigail. Let's make him wish he'd never heard the word prenup." Over the next few days, Eleanor and her team assembled what could only be described as a financial exposé. We weren't just listing my assets, we were detailing their origins, their growth, their projected value. We included every property, every licensing agreement, every diversified investment. We documented my silent partnerships, my intellectual property, and the quiet royalties that flowed in from around the globe. It was a meticulous, ironclad document designed to protect me, not from Grant's ambition, but from his inevitable shock and greed. We scheduled a meeting with Grant and Mr. Peterson. Grant had suggested we just meet at a coffee shop, but I insisted on a Leaner's office, a sprawling suite on the top floor of one of Denver's most prestigious buildings with panoramic views of the Rockies. He seemed a little taken aback when he walked in. "Wow, this is impressive, Abigail. Is this your work attorney's regular office?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but his eyes were wide. Leaner, a formidable woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind, simply smiled. "Welcome, Mr. Harrison. Please have a seat." The meeting began with Mr. Peterson, looking utterly confident, walking us through Grant's simplistic prenup. He spoke about protecting Grant's future earnings potential and his considerable financial contributions to their shared life, effectively implying I had none. Grant sat beside him, nodding along, a smug expression plastered on his face. He thought he had already won. But I knew what was coming next, and the anticipation was a bitter, exhilarating wine. Then it was Alina's turn. She calmly pushed a thick, leather-bound folder across the polished conference table. "Mr. Peterson, Mr. Harrison, here is Abigail's proposed prenuptial agreement, our comprehensive document outlining her current and projected assets." Mr. Peterson, still smirking, picked it up. He opened it, expecting a few pages. His eyes widened, then narrowed. The smirk vanished. Flipped page after page, his face slowly draining of color. Grant, noticing his lawyer's sudden pallor, leaned over. "What is it, Rick? Is there a problem?" Rick Peterson didn't answer. He just kept flipping, his breathing becoming shallow. He looked up at Alina, then at me, a stunned, disbelieving look in his eyes. Grant, growing impatient, snatched the folder. He skimmed the first few pages, his eyes darting across figures that escalated from hundreds of thousands to millions, then tens of millions. The initial shock turned into confusion, then a raw, open-mouthed disbelief. What is this, Abigail, what is this?" he stammered. Alina, perfectly composed, answered for me. "These are Abigail's assets, Mr. Harrison, her intellectual property, her real estate portfolio, her investment accounts, her equity in various ventures, and the substantial royalty income from her patented cloud-based inventory platform. All acquired before your engagement, of course." Grant's face was a mask of utter horror. He looked at me, then back at the document, his eyes frantic. "Cloud platform, royalties, what are you talking about? You're a consultant." "I am," I said, my voice quiet, cutting through the stunned silence. "And I consult on high-level tech implementation. Most of my companies prefer discretion." He dropped the folder as if it were on fire. The papers scattered across the table, revealing more astonishing figures. He tried to speak, but only a gurgle came out. His lawyer, Rick Peterson, had slumped back in his chair, looking utterly defeated, his face ashen. He had clearly underestimated me, and it was a mistake he wouldn't forget. This is impossible," Grant finally managed to stammer. "You drive a Honda Civic, your apartment is tiny." "It serves its purpose," I said, shrugging slightly. "I prefer to keep a low profile." The silence that followed was deafening. Grant was reeling. The man who had walked in expecting to protect his modest fortune from my supposed lack was now confronted with the reality that I was exponentially wealthier than him. His entire narrative, his self-importance, had just shattered into a million pieces. This wasn't just a prenup negotiation anymore. It was an ambush of truth. Mr. Peterson, finally finding his voice, cleared his throat. "Abigail, Miss Hayes, these figures are staggering. Forgive my ignorance, but we had no indication." Alina's smile was chilling. "As I said, Mr. Peterson, Abigail prefers discretion. She allowed Mr. Harrison to believe what he wished to believe." Grant finally exploded, his voice laced with betrayal and rage. "You lied to me, you deliberately misled me. How could you do this?" "I didn't lie, Grant," I said, meeting his furious gaze with a calm, unwavering one. "You just never asked. You assumed. You put me in a box that made you feel comfortable. I simply allowed you the freedom to do so." This was the emotional low point, the rock bottom for him, though he didn't realize it yet. He was seeing his future crumble, but the worst was still to come. He thought everything was lost, but he hadn't seen my true hand. Grant stood up abruptly, knocking his chair over. "This is insane. I can't marry someone who hides something like this." "You're manipulative, Abigail. And you, Grant," I said, standing to face him, my voice rising just enough to carry authority, "are arrogant. You judge a woman's worth by the car she drives and the apartment she lives in. You assume her ambition is less than yours. And you thought I was a gamble you couldn't afford. It seems the truth is you were a gamble I couldn't afford to make." His lawyer, Rick Peterson, quickly intervened. "Mr. Harrison, please, let's remain professional. We need to discuss the terms of this document." "There are no terms to discuss, Rick," Grant yelled, his face red. "I'm not signing this. I'm not marrying her." Alina raised an eyebrow. "It seems we have a termination of engagement then. That simplifies matters considerably." Grant looked at me, his eyes now pleading, the rage replaced by a desperate, dawning realization of what he was losing. "Abigail, wait, we can talk about this. I was just surprised. This is a shock." "Maybe we can work something out?" "Work something out?" I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You wanted to protect your future from me. You didn't want to gamble your future on me. So now I'm protecting my future from you, and that means walking away." He made a desperate lunge towards me, but Alina subtly stepped in the way. "I believe the meeting is concluded, Mr. Harrison." Grant was escorted out by a leaner's assistant, a man twice his size, leaving a stunned Mr. Peterson sitting alone at the table, staring at the scattered documents. He looked up at me, a glimmer of respect, perhaps even fear in his eyes. "Miss Hayes, I apologize on behalf of my client. We had no idea." "That was the point, Mr. Peterson," I said, gathering my copy of the prenup. "Now you do." He thought he was protecting his empire. He had no idea I was about to show him what a real empire looked like, and that he'd just forfeited his chance to be part of it. The public humiliation was just beginning. The wedding, of course, was called off. Grant tried to save face, claiming it was a mutual decision due to irreconcilable differences. But the truth, as it always does, began to leak. Our circle was small enough, and lawyers talk, even if only in veiled generalities. Rumors started circulating about the infamous prenup meeting, about the shock on Grant's face, about the staggering disparity in our finances. Suddenly, Grant wasn't the ambitious, up-and-coming businessman. He was the arrogant fool who let an actual, quietly successful woman slip through his fingers. His reputation took a hit, not because I actively spread rumors, but because the truth itself was a weapon. But my revenge wasn't just about the prenup or his wounded ego. It was about something far more strategic, far more precise. Grant was obsessed with his career, desperate to make a name for himself in the Denver tech scene. He'd been tirelessly pursuing a partnership with a well-established venture capital firm, Horizon Investments. He talked about it constantly, about how it would solidify his future, how it was his ticket to the big leagues. What he didn't know was that while he was busy drafting a prenup to protect his perceived fortune from me, I was quietly investing. Not in Horizon itself, but in a rival, smaller but incredibly innovative VC firm called Catalyst Capital. I had been a silent partner in Catalyst for over a year, impressed by their vision and their ethical approach. Grant's biggest pitch, his make-or-break deal with Horizon, was coming up. He was confident, arrogant even, that he would land it. He'd talked to me about all the details, assuming I wouldn't understand. He didn't know that I understood everything. The day of Grant's final pitch to Horizon Investments, I received a call from Catalyst Capital's CEO Marcus Thorne. "Abigail, just wanted to let you know we just closed a massive deal. We've acquired a controlling interest in Horizon Investments. They're now officially part of the Catalyst family." My heart skipped a beat. This was beyond poetic justice. This was destiny. "That's wonderful news, Marcus," I said, feigning casualness. "Any interesting developments on their end?" "Funnily enough," Marcus continued, "we inherited a full slate of pending pitches. There's a Grant Harrison on the calendar today. His presentation is in an hour. Looks like he's trying to sell us on some rather flimsy ideas." A slow, satisfied smile spread across my face. "Marcus, I have an idea. How about I join your evaluation committee for that pitch?" "I'm quite familiar with Mr. Harrison's unique business philosophies," Marcus chuckled. "Consider it done, Abigail. Welcome to the committee, and good luck, Grant Harrison." I arrived at Horizon's offices, now technically Catalyst-s, dressed immaculately but still in my understated style. My old dented Honda was, of course, parked discreetly down the street. I walked into the conference room and took my seat beside Marcus Thorne, who gave me a knowing wink. Grant walked in a few minutes later, beaming, ready to pitch his heart out. He gave a confident nod to the committee members, then his eyes landed on me. His smile faltered, then completely vanished. His face went utterly white. He stumbled, almost dropping his presentation notes. "Abigail," he whispered, his voice cracking. What are you doing here?" Marcus Thorne, ever the professional, interjected smoothly. "Mr. Harrison, this is Abigail Hayes, one of our key silent partners at Catalyst Capital. She's joined our evaluation committee today. Please begin your presentation." Grant stood there, utterly paralyzed. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He wasn't just pitching to Horizon anymore, he was pitching to me. The woman he'd dismissed, the woman whose worth he'd scoffed at, the woman he'd tried to protect his meager fortune from, was now holding his entire professional future in her hands. His presentation was a disaster. He stammered, he lost his train of thought, his confident pitch dissolving into nervous rambling. He couldn't meet my gaze. I sat there impassive, listening to him flounder, occasionally asking a pointed question that highlighted the weaknesses of his plan, questions I knew he'd never considered because he was too busy assuming he was the smartest person in the room. When he finished, sweat was pouring down his face. He looked at me, a desperate plea in his eyes, but I offered nothing. Marcus Thorne thanked him for his time. As Grant gathered his things, still shaking, I leaned forward. "Grant," I said, my voice soft but clear enough for everyone to hear. "It seems you wanted to gamble your future on me after all, didn't you? You just chose the wrong table." He looked like he was about to vomit. He left the room without another word. The committee politely declined his proposal shortly after. His professional future, the one he was so desperate to protect, was now irrevocably tied to the woman he had so arrogantly dismissed. He had lost everything, not because I took it, but because he valued himself above everyone else, especially me. And that was the ultimate poetic justice, the twist. A few months later, I bought the building where Marcillo's, our old restaurant, was located. The one where he proposed the prenup. Grant eventually heard about it. He never knew, of course, that I had been the silent owner of Marcillo's for years already. The very place where he had tried to protect his future from me had always been part of my quiet empire. He had been dining in my house all along.